Well, you may remember the fuel line problem that we had where the fuel line was not made to match the one in the car. I don't want to say it was made wrong. I think their pattern was wrong that they were going by. The Right Stuff, the company, asked me if I wanted to, if I could send the original fuel line and they would make a duplicate. And they did. And so they took the wrong one back and made this one and shipped it out to me. And you can see it's still bent for shipping, but I'm going to straighten that out. And they did not charge me any extra for the part or the shipping, although I did have to ship it to them, which was not cheap because of the size of it, but it was worth it. And now you can see that all the bends are there, the length is correct. They had to cut the end off there, it broke off, no big deal. But now we have a correct fuel line. So The Right Stuff, can highly recommend them. I mean, it took a couple of weeks till they got this to me, but that's to be expected with a special order kind of thing like this, so I'm not upset about that at all. So I can recommend them. The brake line, as before, the brake lines that I got from them were perfect. So this was just a bad pattern, I think, that they had from before. They had only made 2 of these fuel lines previously and never got any feedback on them. So hopefully they have copied this pattern into their system and can do it. But if you do have a need for this and want to consult with them, they can most certainly make you what you need. And I don't think the prices were unreasonable. So that problem has been resolved. Well done, folks at The Right Stuff. One potential issue with these aftermarket control arms is these holes may not be quite large enough for the bolts to go through for the track rods, mostly because these may not get riveted on exactly straight in the back, and if they're offset a little bit, the 2 thicknesses will be offset, so you'll have to run a drill through there. If I recall, I think I used a 1/2 inch, but something you want to be aware of before you go to put those on. Check and make sure the bolts will actually fit through the holes. Well, here's some more made in China glee. The lower control arms came with new nuts for the ball joints, but they're not the right size. These castle nuts on the right that came with it are way too short, and the cotter pin hole is above where that nut is. So you're going to have to reuse your old nuts, possibly, depending on what Chinesium lower control arms you buy. Don't throw your old hardware away until you get your new stuff, and make sure everything's going to fit. A little upgrade I'm doing, try to solve some of the car's running problems. This is the original distributor, and this is the Load-O-Matic. And if you don't know what these are, you need to read up on them if you have one of these cars so you understand how they work. It has a very bizarre vacuum signal, the way they are set up to operate, and they work in sync with the carb. You can't replace just the carburetor on this car without also changing this distributor, because it will not work with a regular carburetor. It has to work with the Load-O-Matic Autolite 1100. So this one has something wrong with it vacuum wise. Even though this checks out when I put vacuum to it, it moves and it seems to hold vacuum. When I hook it up to the carburetor, it has a massive vacuum leak. So something is wrong with the vacuum canister probably. And I'm not interested in fixing this thing because it's junk. It's a poor design, really. I mean, it was okay in its day, but there's better ways to go. So what I got here was a distributor out of a 206-cylinder Maverick 6970 in that era. You can find these with this double diaphragm, and you don't need this one. This is an emissions one. I'm not even going to get into what that's for. You can just leave it unplugged. You know, I don't think you have to cap it, but I did just because. But this is the vacuum advance port here, and you'll have to put this to manifold vacuum, because with the standard carb there is no port vacuum provision that'll work. So we're hoping that this works. According to the research I've done and what I've read, this should be okay at manifold vacuum. This is a points distributor. It's a single point distributor. if you're doing this for a permanent thing and not just being a cheapskate like I am, trying to make this last for a year, you'd probably want to get an Adore Spark or one of the GM conversions, although I don't like those big caps on Fords. But this is a pretty easy conversion that I hope works. I haven't really seen anybody else talk about doing this, but I'm going to give it a shot. There's no reason it shouldn't work. I did check and make sure the gears are the same size in both of these and everything. And I mean, it's physically different, but the bottom part, the shaft length, is all the same. So that's what's important. So we're going to do this first, and then hopefully that'll take some of the issues away with the vacuum, that I can just now isolate any problems to the carburetor itself. I'm hoping that this will just work, but I'm not confident because I think there is a problem with the carb. That thing was so gunked up and seized inside in certain places that I'm just not sure that all the passages are really functioning as they should. But we're going to start with this because this is easy. And I don't want to buy a brand new carburetor for a car that I'm only going to be driving a 6-cylinder for a year. So, and the used carbs are as much or more than a new Chinesium one. So it doesn't make any sense to buy one if I don't have to. So I'm going to try to make this carb work, but I want to isolate the problems one at a time. And this was a simple solution to this. So I'm going to give it a shot. These can stick in the car or in the engine block. I have these large pliers that I use to wiggle it back and forth and get it loose, and then using a nice piece of wood from underneath, I whack it a couple times on the base. There's a good place to hit it there, and usually it'll pop it loose and it'll pop right up and out. So I got that one out much easier than I thought it was going to be. And then we're going to install this one, and then I have to run the vacuum lines, which is a little bit of a Rube Goldberg thing too. I use that term a lot, I know, but it's the most politically correct one I know for the stuff I'm doing here. But we're going to have to run the vacuum. The source I found is the one that goes to, I believe, the transmission. It goes at the back there. It's really the only vacuum source there is. This thing does not have a lot of vacuum ports on it. It's like got 2, so I got to use whichever one's the most available. So I'm going to get to installing this, and then we'll cross our fingers and hope it runs right, or better. Alright, we got the new distributor installed. This is a little cantankerous of a job to do if you've never done one of these before. Getting it to drop down in where it engages with the oil pump drive is a little difficult. We'll just say that. But I got it in, and this distributor works fine. Nothing wrong with it. It's a used eBay item. I think it cost me about 50 bucks to get it here, so not a bad deal. I don't have the vacuum advance plumbing hooked up yet because I'm still trying to vacuum tune this thing, but distributor works fine. It's not maybe necessarily in quite the way it should be. I think I'm about a tooth off maybe on the cam gear, but it's fine. Currently it's only set to about 6 degrees advance. I'll probably adjust that up a little bit once I get this thing dialed in. But the problem is that it still runs like crap. Now, I didn't expect this distributor to solve my problems, but I was going to see if it changed anything, and it didn't, before going off into the carburetor realm again. So I have come to the conclusion after playing with it more today and trying to set it, the tuning on it, that the carburetor has some sort of issue in the idle circuit, or something is not right. And as rusty and ugly as that carb was when I first took it apart, I am not convinced that I do not have a clogged passage someplace, despite it being in the ultrasonic twice and being cleaned out multiple times. I just think it's probably a little bit beyond repair. So I'm probably going to suck it up and just buy a new carburetor, as much as it pains me to do so for this 6-cylinder, but you got to do what you got to do. They do make these carburetors brand new in China, of course, and they get basically pretty good reviews. There's some people that have had problems with them not being machined properly, or they come with the float set completely wrong or something like that, but I'll just check it out when I get it. So probably going to do that and try to get this thing where it runs, because it actually idles all over the place. It keeps changing its mind about where it wants to idle, no matter where you set the air fuel mixture or anything else. So that's why I'm thinking that the carburetor itself has a problem, because it's not a consistent issue. It's just all up and down and very random. Suspension is half together on both sides. Still waiting for some parts. I'm still missing the inner tie rod ends and the grease fittings for the upper control arms. Hopefully they come this week. And it is another week gone by and still no seats from the upholstery shop. Shocker. That's not going to be a pleasant conversation this week. My list is getting shorter. Blissfully so. And so this is the condition of the car currently in the garage. And we have about probably about 2 weeks to go yet before we have to commit to taking it to the Falcon Nationals in Tennessee or not. So we'll see if we make it. We should be able to if the parts show up in time, and if we don't have to drive on a milk crate. Well, it was funny. Everything almost showed up on the same day. All the parts that I had ordered, and I got the call that the seats were done on the day that I was going to call and raise royal hell. So anyway, we got them. And they look fantastic. I apologize about the poor lighting, but these turned out absolutely fabulous. This was some cloth that they had in stock from who knows how long ago. No idea what it's actually for. And then we got some vinyl to match. And I mean, the color is almost perfect with the carpet and the trim panels and everything. I couldn't be happier with how this turned out. This is wonderful. So we finally got those. That big piece of the puzzle that was missing is finally here. I got the inner tie rod ends that I was waiting for. And we also got the Hinkyo brand new carburetor. So I'm going to try putting that on probably tomorrow. Still need to get the suspension on and the brakes bled and working, but we've got a problem. Okay, I can't recommend Dorman upper control arms. I bolted this one in and couldn't figure out why it wouldn't move. It was locked in place. Well, here's the problem. This is much farther out than this one, and this hits the shock tower and won't allow it to pivot. I have no idea how I would even correct that. I mean, if you cut this off, you're losing strength here. I'm stuck. Not sure what to do. Just a reminder, never to throw your old parts away until you're sure that the new stuff fits. Also, I was going to just use these original control arms because I know they fit. And figured I'd just swap over the pivots and new bushings. That's actually not that hard to do. And the ball joints. The problem is, the original ball joints are held in with 4 rivets. The replacement ball joints are 3 rivets. So they are not swappable. So we are at an impasse with upper control arms. I'm going to have to buy some new stuff. And that probably kills our timeline. So, anyway, on to other things. On another note, while I'm struggling with these, I wanted to show these grease fittings that you can get. If you haven't cut holes in your shock towers, or somebody hasn't cut holes in there to access the grease fittings on these from the factory that come straight out. You can buy these right angle adapters and a long grease fitting. These came from Scott Drake, and I got these from one of the Falcon vendors. But they were expensive, but they do solve a problem, and you just kind of point these in the direction you want them to go, and you can fill the car's pivots with grease while it's all together without drilling or torching holes in your shock tower. So there they are. I think the whole set with everything was like 20 bucks. So you get 4 of them for both upper control arms. So that was a nice upside, but don't know what we're going to do there. I took this brand new carburetor apart because several of the reviews mentioned that the float level was completely wrong and the carburetor was flooding out. I just wanted to check it and compare it to the existing carburetor, and it looks like it is actually set correctly. One thing I did find when I took this apart again was, first of all, the needle valve seems to stick in the closed position, but I don't think it was actually doing that while it was in the car, because it would have starved for gas, and we were never without gas. If anything, we had too much. The other is that this accelerator pump that was stuck, I have freed it up, but it still sticks sometimes in the, say like that, in the down position. Say it's still stuck. So those are just two things I've observed with this, despite having taken it apart and cleaned it many, many times, and new rebuild kit and so on. It just doesn't seem like it wants to come back. I think it was gunked up for too long. So anyway, we're going to try the new Henkyo Chinesium carburetor and see how that goes. I'm going to put that back together and get it installed. Oh, we're much happier now. Still has a peculiar mist somewhere, but it's not from the carburetor. Success! Well, folks, that's going to do it for this episode. We got this thing finally running halfway decent. Might have a bad plug or something for that weird little miss, but I'll work on that. But the Chinesium carburetor, that was a good thing. So we got that fixed and running, but we're still stuck with the upper control arm issue. So we got about 2 weeks to go till the Falcon Nationals. I can probably get it done, but I was trying to schedule it for wheel alignment today, and wasn't having any success finding anybody that can get me in before the departure date. So we may leave this thing at home. It's not looking too good, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. So that's it for this episode, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching and following along.